off some artillery pieces that I've made. Starting off, I'm going to refresh your memory before we see the main attractions of this thing, the Semovente da RLM 35/105F, aka the one of the models of French captured French RLM 35A tankettes. This one being mounted with a traversable turret and a 105mm artillery gun. The artillery gun is slow to elevate, it's got a pretty low rate of fire, and it's a 105mm small/medium sort of artillery gun, and it's got a slow turret traverse and all of that. The crew are smashed into a small space, being the turret mounted on the back of the RLM 35, and yeah, it's got an 18-second reload time, so it's nothing too spectacular, but it's a decent enough light artillery piece to support your infantry units. You know, what more could you want from a pre-war obsolete French tankette? If you were Italy, this is what you're doing. So yeah, it's your standard sort of artillery piece. So that is the 105mm gun. And the guns that I'm going to show you next, I'm going to go up in order of caliber, not order that I've made them. So the gun that I'm going to show you first, or rather the vehicle I'm going to show you first, is the third vehicle of this type that I've made. And if we scroll down here, you'll notice its picture. Here it is. Once it loads in, there it is. The Semovente da 43/831, aka a self-propelled gun with a 381mm gun mounted on it. So you can already see this is how we're starting things off. Yeah, don't worry about how fast the gun elevation is. That's because it's late war era. But yeah, so this is how we're starting off. We're starting off with an Italian naval gun. It's called, I can't remember the name of it, but it's a 15-inch gun. So a 15-inch French artillery piece, not French artillery piece, rather, Italian naval piece, which is mounted onto a tracked chassis, which is pretty ridiculous to have a 15-inch naval gun on here, but here it is. As you can see, it elevates, but it doesn't traverse. And the gun itself, the actual breech is the turret. It's just got some smoothing and rounding on it. So it's got a 70-degree gun elevation, which, there we go, we're up to our maximum. So that's its maximum gun elevation there, we can just about see. Breech loading, so rear, there's the rear breech. We've got some crew hatches, spare wheel, extra crew hatch, crew hatch at the front for the driver, the radio operator's jammed in there somewhere, we've got the commander's cupola there, we've got some spare boxes on top, we've got some spare track links and wheels, giant spare log, and of course the front engine deck with its 6 exhausts. And yeah, it's a pretty interesting naval gun. There we go, we've got a 46-second reload time-ish on this thing, so yeah, good luck with that, Italians, reloading this thing, ex-naval gun. And it's not too bad for mobility-wise, actually. It's pretty fast, as you can see. We can zoom about. The suspension isn't quite enjoying it as much as it could be, but that's only top speed. Actual traverse rate is not good, considering we have got no gun arc off this thing, because yeah, the gun is mounted directly on its chassis, so there is absolutely no gun arc either way. The only way you're aiming this is if you're turning it manually via the tracks. So yeah, and you know, it makes quite a big shell hole when you fire it. If we were to get up an L5, and if we can actually hit it from here, there we go, lovely. So now that we've shot it, the engine might just be in the way there, the smoke. But yeah, unfortunately the engine is in the way, so let's just spawn another one. Let's spawn the L4. Also, we've got absolutely no armour either on this thing. go, lovely. So there's the shell hole. We've got absolutely no armour on this thing. It's 10mm of armour all around because I need the space for the basket space. And the spare ammunition and all that, because you could definitely keep ammunition in there, in this tank. Really, you would need at least 2 trucks full of Italians to run this thing going. One truck with a crane and its operators, and the other one with loads of gunners and loaders. But there you go. That's the 380mm shell hole on an L434. It's quite the large shell hole. But this is only the smallest of the super heavy artilleries that I've got to show you. For the next one up, we need to go to Britain. And so for Britain, as you can see, I've got quite a lot of interesting tanks here, but if we were to scroll to the bottom, there's not there, and then we start scrolling upwards, and we're seeing it here. The 18-inch gun carriage Mark I. This is the first gun of this type that I made. This is the first vehicle that I made. And as you can see, it's quite a large gun. This is actually the same gun that is mounted outside of the Imperial War Museum, London. And it's an 18-inch, it's a BL 18-inch naval gun, which is 457mm of diameter. So, yeah, quite large. There's the rear breech that I tried to model using the various in-game bits and pieces to make it look like the breech that's outside of the Imperial War Museum. And, you know, we've got 2 Commander's cupolas, we've got some spare machine guns, we've got 2 very large exhausts there. And of course the engine deck is right here in the middle of the gun. We've got driver right there, radio operators smashed inside here somewhere, possibly underneath this hatch. Got some lights, spare lights at the back, and of course the main gun is right there. So it's quite a large gun, as you can see. And just like the Italian gun, we have got 70 degrees of gun elevation. Here we go, lovely. So there you go, we can look right down the barrel and see it. There's a better view of the engine deck. Mobility-wise, yeah, again, not great. The gun itself doesn't have a gun arc. The armour itself is only 10mm of thickness everywhere, because once again I needed that space. And, well, the gun has a 56-second reload time. But it's quite the powerful gun. We've got some armor-piercing and some armor-piercing high explosive in here. We've got 40 rounds in total carried within the vehicle, which is probably too much. But we're capable of lobbing a shell quite far with this ex-naval gun. And yeah, it's quite the monstrosity. For the first vehicle I made of this type, it's one of my favourites out of all of them. Probably my second favourite, maybe, out of the 4 that I'm going to show here. But yeah, it leaves quite the shell hole as well. If we were to get something like, I don't know, say the Alfred Clarendon carrier. You know, this is very fair because I have got no gun depression, but also, there you go, lovely. But also I've got absolutely no armour. The Alfred Clarendon could kill me quite easily. But let's just drive over and see what it's like. As we can see, all of these tanks have got neutral steering because they need it in order to actually function. Having clutch braking wouldn't work. But yeah, this has got an even bigger shell hole, and that's quite the shell hole in there. By all rights, the Alfred Clarendon should be a pile of scrap, quite literally, and not intact like it is, but yeah, that's quite the shell hole in the Alfred Clarendon. There it is. That's left quite the mark. The turret would not be there. The rest of the tank would not be there. But that is the BL breech loading 18-inch gun, 457mm of pure ex-naval power. But this is only the 3rd largest of the guns that I have to show you. So for the next one, we need to move to France. So once in France, we need to go here, and it's right there. The Char Bussier Model 1916. This is a 520mm railway howitzer mounted within a French tracked chassis. It's quite large. It is an Bussier model 1916. what is this, an 18-inch, possibly? I think it's something like an 18-inch railway howitzer. So, being a howitzer, it gets a whole 80 degrees of gun elevation. And yeah, I think this is my favourite vehicle in terms of looks out of the four of them. I don't know why, I just like it in the blue and how I've got it all laid out. As you can see, quadruple layer road wheels rather. There you go, quadruple layered road wheels, quadruple layered return rollers, triple layered idler wheel, I think. No, is it double or triple? Triple layered idler wheel. And we're using the World War I tracks because they look cool and they're the closest French tracks I could think of. But as you can see, breech at the back. We got some crew hatches also for loading and unloading the howitzer shells. Spare fuel tank at the back. Well, spare fuel barrels at the back. Got our rear light. We've got various things on the side. You know, tow cable because you're going to be towing this thing around somewhere. Spare tools and some crew stowage at the side. That one's actually that one shouldn't be there. What are you doing there? Oh, there you go. Get rid of you. There you go. So yeah, also it weighs 280.99 tons, so you're not going to be using this in any scenarios, but we do have a giant engine deck at the front, the crew hatches at the front as well, very stretched, and on the top as well. Our two commander's cupolas, we've got our radio masts, and that's how the tracks look when they're when they're not on the vehicle itself. Carried a spare. We got some spare logs as well on the side, and railway howitzer. Yeah, it's quite the howitzer. It doesn't actually have too long of a reload, surprisingly, for a 500mm gun, and that's due to the shell length. The shell length of this thing is only 110mm, which gives it a maximum penetration of 137mm. The British one had about 150 something millimeters, and the Italian one had 160 millimeters or something of penetration, which is, or 175 actually, I think, for the Italian one. That's all because of their. Well, that's all because they're just giant shells, and Sprocket isn't designed to deal with that. But yeah, we do have a pretty high gun arc. You know, we can get it all the way up there, and oof, there it goes. And of course, if you want to have a more shallower gun firing arc, then you can always have it like that. But yeah, because it is a very, very large caliber gun, if we get an RLM 35A, and here's our neutral steering, which is not serving us very well. But where's that RLM gone? There he is. And there's the shell hole right there. Although that wasn't a particularly good hit, so let's get that RLM up again. There he is. Let's try and get a nice lower hit on him. Like right there. There you go. That's a lovely hit. And yeah, mobility-wise, this thing is not mobile. This is not mobile at all. Calling this a mobile artillery piece is stretching it a little bit, but the wheels are funny. The wheels are funny, bouncing around like that, and yeah, it's quite the artillery piece. And if we just have a look at the shell hole, and you can see that it does quite a lot of damage. There it is. The entire front of the vehicle is basically gone because this is a large howitzer shell. But we can go bigger. We can go bigger than this. And whenever you need to go bigger and ridiculously oversized to the point where it shouldn't function and is a complete waste of time building it, you need to go to the Germans. So that's what we're going to do. So welcome to the Wehrmacht, and if you thought that this gun was ridiculous, you haven't seen the Geschutzwagen Panzer Gustav. It's a 600mm railway artillery gun mounted to a mobile, in quotes, chassis. It's large, and it's in charge. We've got our big gun breech right there. We've got our Schwere Gustav cannon right there, which we need to scroll over here to get reach. Here we go. As you can see, 600mm of pure railway gun power. We've got the triple-layered interleaved road wheels, which some poor German technician is going to have to deal with at some point, with the quadruple return rollers and the... Where's the idler? It's back here. What is this idler? Is this a quadruple idler? Of course it is. It's a quadruple idler. And of course we have got our giant frontal sprocket, which... just look at the size of that. That's an entire car width in and of itself. But yeah, we got engine vents and panels on the side with our 6 exhausts mounted here. We've got, that's the width of the tracks right there. Some crew stowage right there. Of course the main gun is right there in the middle. We've got commander's cupola, we've got hatch right there, and I could give this armour because I do have quite a lot of internal space to play around with, but I'm not going to. Twin MG34s at the front for supposed anti-infantry capabilities, spare tools, spare logs, because the logs will really help if this thing's slipping somewhere. Yeah, more vents at the back as well, because both this and the French tank have got 60-litre V16, sorry, 80-litre V16s, but because it does weigh 813.74 tonnes at its maximum RPM of 2,700 RPM, we get 2.8 horsepower per tonne ratio, which means that this thing would not only collapse under its own weight, but also not go anywhere. But this is Sprocket. You can do something like this and it works. And this suspension, oof, that's quite the suspension. Luckily though, the interleaved road wheels are actually helping with keeping it afloat, shall we say. It doesn't completely sink to the ground every time, and you can technically drive it up a slope, just very slowly and very difficultly. Or, sorry, with great difficulty, I should say. But yeah, here is our Gustav cannon. As you can see, gunner sight is lovely. Gun elevation is slow for like the first couple of seconds, and then it speeds up. As we can see, here we go. There we go, it's elevating nice and easily. As for actual gun elevation though, it only goes up to 60 degrees of gun elevation, because otherwise the breech goes into the ground. So this is our maximum elevation of our railway gun, as you can see, with the walkway around the back, and the barrel is so tall I can't fit it in frame unless I do this, and as you can see, this is quite the railway gun. But if we get it to a shallower gun arc, like this, and we were to be able to actually get it in frame, here we go, and then we were to fire it, there it goes, lovely. Yeah, 110-second reload time, which is about a minute and a half here in Sprocket, which is, you know, it's reflective of the other artillery calibers that I have shown, and their reload times, if you think about it. Because these are all wildly inflated, but there's the rear gun breech, quite large. You would need about 50 different German trucks with a whole load of Germans in this to operate, because you'd need all sorts of trucks carrying spare shells and you know, cranes in order to lift up the shells of the breech, and then all of the crew to actually get around this thing. But yeah, this is just the Geschützwagen Gustav. It's quite the Panzer, and I don't even know if we'll be able to shoot at something with this. What can we shoot at? I don't know. I guess SDKF said 102. Maybe. We don't have the gun depression to hit him. He's too low. Okay, let's get something else then. Let's get the 935 and hope it doesn't kill us. As you can see, neutral steering is doing nothing for us, and we die instantly to it. So these things aren't particularly combat effective, but you can see just how large this thing is, because that's a 250mm battleship shell going right into the side, and it looks tiny. It looks normal size compared to the size of this thing. So let's try and hit one of these things, shall we? Oh no, we can't do that though, because I don't have the penetration to get through it. This thing has got the most penetration out of all of these artillery guns, but the penetration is only 217. We actually bounced a shell. Yeah, the penetration is only 217 millimeters, which is not great considering the size of this thing. I guess something larger like this, perhaps? No, stop. Stop turning. No, let me shoot you. I don't have the gun diversion anymore. And as you can see, we don't like to stop. We don't like to drive around anyway. Let me shoot you. Just got peppered in 75mm rounds. Okay, I might not be able to actually shoot anything with this because I don't have anything that's unarmoured, or unarmed rather, that's also tall enough to not kill me. Maybe a fake LOL tractor. Yes, drive into my gun. There we go. There we go. Now that's a shell hole right there. Let's go look at the damage. We were able to shoot the knockoff LOL tractor. It worked. As you can see, the 2.8 horsepower per ton ratio is really not doing us any favours with moving around here. This is quite the artillery gun and a half to be mounted on a track. But let's at least try and get over to this thing. Oh, there goes the tree. That tree went with some velocity. We can look at the shell hole. There it is. There's the shell hole. That's what we're talking about. Get out of our shadow. There you go. Look at that. The LOL tractor should not be there, but it is. So yeah, that is the Geschützwagen Panzer Gustav mounting the railway artillery piece. And yeah, that's all of the stupid railway artillery guns that I have to show you here today. Thank you all for watching, and goodbye.